To you a couple of weeks ago, Vancouver is the best statistical team that I have ever seen. I mean, I was trying to do some research the other day to try to how to put this in perspective. But I remember there was one year where the 49ers was number one in offense and defense. Well, this team, Vancouver, is number one in offense, number one in defense, number one in special teams. I mean, they don't give up goals on power play. They don't give up. They score goals on power play. They lead. They had led the league this year in, um, goals scored per game and fewest goals allowed per game. I mean, if that's not a dominant season, if that's not a season of destiny, I have no idea what is. And unfortunately for the defending champs, the Chicago Blackhawks, well, you've had such a lackluster season, and you got to play against this team, this juggernaut. And in game one, you just couldn't match up. Yeah, you got 2 goals, but they scored 4 of them. And tonight they're out one of their players who got suspended for a pretty decent hit. But this team is loaded for bear. The West does have a couple of teams that are compelling. I mean, Detroit always is good in the playoffs. They always have good goaltending. San Jose, San Jose has been that team that has great players for the past 3 seasons. Everyone has picked San Jose to go to the finals or to win the championship. And every year San Jose gets knocked out in the first round. And the other night against the Kings, the Kings are missing some key players, and they gave San Jose all they can handle. One of these days, San Jose will figure out a way to live up to its billing. But until then, a lot of people will be disappointed with them if they lose in the first round again. And boy, the Kings have got to be kicking themselves. I mean, granted, guys get hurt playing sports. I mean, we'll talk about that with the Josh Hamilton situation in baseball in a minute. But man, losing one of their key players who's been brilliant for them all season long, and the way they played their hearts out the other day and just couldn't get it done. And the funny thing about a lot of these matchups in the first round is a lot of these teams have winning records against the favorite teams. I mean, the Coyotes had a winning record against Detroit this season, but in Game 1, Detroit did what it did. I mean, it's going to be a very, very compelling playoff series that no one will be able to get to watch because it's on the Versus Network. But I still see Vancouver coming out of the West because they are just really that good. And to the person who tried to call the show a minute ago, I'm sorry. I guess I'm having some phone difficulties. But like I said, if you're on Facebook, you can go to Facebook and shoot me something on Facebook, or you can email me at fwamp@gmail.com, or just sit back and listen to the show. Or you can just text me on my cell phone, which I'm not going to give out. In the East, what can you say? The top 4 teams are solid enough to win the whole thing, and just when I think that, Montreal goes in and beats Boston. Pittsburgh surprised me the other day by the way they played. Good defense, good goaltending. Philadelphia last night, they've been struggling lately, and Buffalo took it to them. But if you're Boston, this series is extremely important because you do have the ability, you have the offense, you have the power play, and the goaltending to make a run. And last night, it was just completely invisible. Now, can you imagine being that guy, Daniel Chara, who hit that guy, and the guy ended up getting hurt and taken out on a stretcher, and they'll be going to Montreal in a few days, and he might get arrested when they cross the border for that hit. I think the Rangers are going to scare Washington. I think the Rangers have the ability to actually, with their goaltending, Lundqvist is, he's pretty good. And he played great the other night. But how do you lose a game with 13 seconds on the clock, though? Just sloppy defense. And that's the one thing about hockey that, that makes it the best playoffs in all sport, is every night is a different game. Every night is a different game. Sometimes when you play in the NFL and the NBA, especially in the NBA, we'll use the NBA for as an example. If you're just better than a team, you're just better than a team. In the NFL, same thing. If you just have an ability to beat somebody, you can do it. In hockey, You can be as sharp as a tack. You can pass, you can hit, you can move the puck well, take 55 shots on goal, pepper the goalie all night long. But if that goalie is standing on his head and making every save, one of the great expressions in all of sport, nothing you can do about it. So every night, yeah. I mean, obviously on paper, you know, it looks like Vancouver and Washington should be the two teams that make it to the Stanley Cup final and fight for the right to hoist Lord Stanley. But, just like I said, you never know. And we'll be back on 89.7 KLASFM Class Radio after this.
Repairs, including expert collision work, LA Radiator on Santa Monica Boulevard is the place to go. Located just a few steps east of Vine, LA Radiator offers the fastest service at the lowest cost available anywhere in the area. Whether it's just a tune-up or a major repair, you'll be putting your car in the best hands possible. Don't let the name LA Radiator fool you. They do a lot more than just radiators. Remember, the next time your car needs any repair, try LA Radiator at 6216 Santa Monica Boulevard, located just a few steps east of Vine Street in Hollywood.
The NFL draft is 2 weeks away, and there's a lot of things to talk about with the draft. This season's draft is loaded with good players on defense and quarterbacks on 89.7 KLASFM. As many as 7 defensive linemen and possibly 5 quarterbacks could be drafted within the first 35 to 40 picks. And in the AFC, it's time. Because if you think about the AFC teams, you think about the Colts, you think about the Patriots, you think about the Chargers, you think about the Ravens. They have been on top, and of course the Steelers. They have been on top for the past 6-7 years, maybe even more. Maybe even a full decade. You've seen the same 5 teams fight for the chances to go to the Super Bowl. Lately, we've had this run in AFC where you had young quarterbacks like Joe Flacco and Mark Sanchez lead their teams to the championship game, but not get to the big dance. So, I think some of these older teams need to start to replace some of their parts with some new parts. And I would not be shocked if the Patriots or the Colts drafted quarterbacks, because you can only have Tom Brady and Peyton Manning for so long. So let's tell you what each team needs, in my opinion. In the East, I think New England needs a running back. That's one way to keep Tom Brady's career going, is getting him a running back. I think the Jets last year showed that offensively they're pretty stout. They just need on defense to shore up some help on the defensive line and maybe get a linebacker. Miami, well, Miami's an interesting team because Miami has a young quarterback. They got a go-to receiver. They got an interesting tight end. Ronnie Brown's always hurt. Ricky Williams, I believe, is just retired. And they always play solid defense. Miami is one of the teams that beat the Packers last year, actually. But I just think that their needs aren't as urgent as the other teams are. They just play a different style of football where they don't need one player is going to make a big difference. But if I'm them, I'd get a defensive back. Why not? Everybody needs one to be able to defend the receivers from the AFC. The Buffalo Bills. No one circles the wagons, as Chris Berman likes to say, like the Buffalo Bills. Well, the Buffalo Bills, they need a franchise quarterback. They need somebody to put their stamp on that organization like they had with Jim Kelly. They've got a good young running back. They've got good young receivers, good young offensive line. Defense isn't that bad. Get yourself someone to be the signature person for your organization. Now in the AFC North. And by the way, you can call in the show. I know I'm having some technical difficulties. Maybe we've just fixed them. Who knows? At area code 323-46. I'm about to give my hostel number. 323-962-1937. The Baltimore Ravens. Well, like I said, the Ravens are getting a little long in the tooth. They probably need to upgrade on the defensive line and offensive line. They probably need a running back to sort of take over the reins instead of having one person share it. But the Ravens were close enough last year to have made a run for the big dance. And unfortunately for them, they just run into Pittsburgh all the time. Pittsburgh needs help on their offensive line. Flozell Adams is not the answer. And they do have a young tackle, but he's still learning. Defensively, they have all the pieces on defense to be special. Their secondary might need a little bit of work. But, you know, the Jets, if the Jets played better in the first half, the Jets would have been playing for Super Bowl against the Packers. Cincinnati. Carson Palmer. I met Carson Palmer maybe 4 years ago, and I was at a club one time, and he autographed the back of my credit card receipt one time, and we were just talking. And very nice guy. Clearly not a prima donna quarterback. But he cannot be serious about retiring if they don't get rid of him, if they don't trade him. And if he is serious about it, that's very disappointing. And that's why the Bengals need to draft a quarterback, because they got to cover their butt. Cleveland. Well, Cleveland just got Colt McCoy last year. They got Josh Cribbs. And I defy you to tell me who else they have. I mean, I know they have a few other good players too, but the point of the matter is Cleveland needs a marquee name, whether it's a receiver, whether it's a defensive tackle, or that great linebacker from Texas A&M. Cleveland needs somebody to put people in the seats because they have great fans who love football. Let's move to the South. The Colts. I just told you, the Colts need to start thinking about the future and put a quarterback in place to be ready to take over for Peyton Manning. They also need to get some defensive line help. For every season they seem to be great, and then all of a sudden their defensive ends get hurt. They've already gotten rid of Bob Sanders, so obviously their secondary needs some help. I think the Colts are going to take a step back this year. Joseph Adai always gets hurt. Donald Brown, his replacement, always gets maybe the Colts need to just put grass field and just play on grass. Maybe that'll preserve a lot of their players, huh? The Titans are going to part ways with Vince Young probably in the next couple of months. And hopefully, you know, he'll land someplace and be happy. And they also need to address some defensive concerns. Houston Texans is the team of the future in this league. They got the good quarterback. They got the good running back. They got the great receiver. They have the great, you know, defensive end. Houston just needs to just fill in the pieces in terms of the secondary and the linebacker position. The Jacksonville Jaguars. I've been a David Garrard fan because he's been okay. But it's time for them to start to look for a new quarterback. They got a great running back. They got an up-and-coming wide receiver. Defensively, they don't beat themselves. Last year might have been the first time I've seen them get pushed around a little bit. So maybe they need to get some toughness on the defensive line. But I truthfully believe that they surprised me last season by playing as well as they did in certain times on that defense. Got to address the offensive line. Got to address the offense, period. And then the West. The Raiders. The Oakland Raiders. Jason Campbell was okay at quarterback last year, and they've shown that they do have a good receiver core coming up. They've got the best running backs combination in the league with all three of those guys. They just need to grow, get better at wide receiver and tight end position, even though Miller's pretty good at tight end. And defensively, they just got to tackle. They got to get a linebacker who they know who will just tackle. And the defensive line in the interior, they need somebody that's to stuff that run. The Chiefs, last season, the #1 rushing offense in the NFL, have a quarterback